So are we likely to see the country move to a less stricter lockdown level? While we found out in just less than an hour, the Health Ministry confirmed on Friday that the country has passed the third wave peak. So did level 4 restrictions actually pay off? Well, let's bring into this conversation now Alex van der Heever, specialist in health economics and finance at Wits School of Business. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening. So about 4 weeks we had a level 4 lockdown restrictions imposed on South Africa for the purpose of saving lives. Did it do justice to the cause?
Well, it's sometimes quite difficult to know whether the restrictions impacted or whether the sort of natural conditions turned the epidemic. What we've seen is that the peak has kind of been achieved at roughly the same period as last winter. And it's unclear whether or not people started reacting behaviorally to seeing their own family members getting sick and going to hospital and dying, and that can have its own effect on its own. But I think that there will have been some effect from the restrictions on potential super spreading risks. But as I said, separating out the issues is always going to be difficult.
Yeah, separating out the issues, but unfortunately, the livelihoods of South Africans are at stake here, Prof. As we stand right now, if we have to just tally up what has been lost as a result of the past week in the riots, it's about 50 billion rand in output. So with that in mind, can South Africa actually afford an extended lockdown of level 4?
I don't think we can. I think that the impact on KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng has been dramatic. And part of the problem there is that you have both the economic impact on people's livelihoods and organizations, but you also reduce government revenue at the same time. And so government's capability to respond to either the pandemic or to other issues is reduced. So with that kind of impact that we had in the last 2 weeks, we really can't afford to have any kind of negative impact on the economy going forward.
You know, a lot of times when it comes to balancing lives versus livelihoods, and in fact I was having this conversation earlier on with the Black Business Council CEO, Hanke Matabane, speaking about how the solution right now needs to be around vaccinating the public, ensuring that as many people get vaccinated as possible. However, Prof, you and I appreciate the fact that not all South Africans are actually open to being vaccinated. So how then do we start contending with those realities where vaccination hesitancy is a real phenomenon in this country?
Well, first of all, I think at this point in time, demand is going to exceed supply. So the people who are not prepared to be vaccinated don't represent a problem to rolling out the vaccination process. It only becomes a problem toward the end when some people refuse to get vaccinated. And if we ultimately end up with about sort of 20 to 30% of the population who just flatly refuse to get vaccinated, we are unfortunately going to be in the position where we will achieve a degree of wider protection through natural infections, because in fact what will happen is people who don't get vaccinated are actually going to be at a higher risk of infection than they would be now, for instance, because we will normalize activities and the vaccinated population will be protected against severe illness, but the unvaccinated population will in fact be at risk of being infected by vaccinated people. So the issue is that the risk actually rises for people who are unvaccinated of being infected and therefore severe illness. South Africa and the rest of the world is going to return to normal activities after we've reached near universal vaccination. And those that haven't been vaccinated are then really going to be at risk, because we actually can't afford to keep the economy shut down for people who don't come forward.
Yeah, and also a lot of times when it comes to, being able to balance economics at this point, is the damage too rife? Is the damage too, extensive at this point to achieve the economic recovery plan as set out by NEDLAC when we're still contending with about level 3, 4 lockdown in the beginning of the year? Or are we still able to get ahead of the curve irrespective of what happened with the riots and the subsequent losses that we incurred?
So my background is as an economist, and we engage in these discussions quite extensively amongst the economic fraternity. And I think it's important to understand that the South African economy actually has quite a lot of resilience to it if we stop battering it. We were on the route to a very significant recovery, And I think that there are many things that are potentially positive going forward in South Africa, both through the worldwide response to stimulating economic growth, as well as our domestic sort of drive and opening of the economy. So I think that both mean that we are in a good position to improve our conditions, also with some of the recent reforms of government and potentially through some of the measures that government may introduce in the next couple of weeks. And I think that all of those will contribute toward improving our economic performance. But we do have to stop those people who are attempting to sabotage the South African economy, because that's probably the only thing working against us at this point in time. Everything else is potentially in our favor. We will recover from the COVID disaster, and we certainly can. And I think we've got the capability to do that, and the private sector is very capable in South Africa. So I think we've just got to move forward, and we've got to deal with the people who are sabotaging our efforts to get our country back in order.
Yeah, but Alex, on the other side of it, it's around political will. Is there political will to deal with those people that are trying to sabotage the economy? We saw that the reason why government was criticized over the last week was because of the lax kind of response. It was almost a lack in foresight, or the lack in vision in being able to anticipate some kind of a revolt as a result of former President Jacob Zuma handing himself over for arrest. So in that essence, one needs to question the political will of government to actually deal decisively with those that would try to sabotage this economy that we're trying to rebuild, so to say.
So I think that there are elements within the former governments of South Africa and the ANC who have a vested interest in stopping the process of putting them in jail and ending the whole patronage process behind government. So I do not see Zuma as being the trigger for anything. I think some people see that as a slippery slope. That was the time, if they're getting to Zuma, they're getting to everybody else, and they need to kind of take control of the government in order to stop that. And I think that South Africa will not let that happen. But the issue of dealing with the capability of the state to resolve security issues and to manage the economy going forward is going to be absolutely critical. But a central part of that is we have to clean up government. We can't afford to have criminals in government. And that's criminals within the security structures and criminals within other parts of the state who only see government as an opportunity for looting. So this is really going to be the challenge going forward. We have to address that as part of South Africa's economic recovery. We can't afford criminals in government anymore.
Yeah, and very quickly, before I let you go, investor confidence, in your opinion, high, low, medium?
Well, I think that investor confidence is uncertain at this point because they're kind of waiting for a move forward. I think that they are ready and prepared to have a positive outlook on South Africa. And I think they were already prepared for that up until 2 weeks ago. And I think that there's some people who want that investor confidence to decline. I think that we've got to do a number of confidence-boosting exercises in South Africa in the short term, but I think that at this point in time, they probably are playing the waiting game. They're just waiting to see what will happen.
We'll leave it there. Professor Alex van der Heever, specialist in health economics and finance at the Wits School of Governance.